Omer Neutra was born in New York City 23 years ago and grew up on Long Island. He was the captain of his high school's basketball and volleyball teams and the regional president at the United Synagogue Youth Movement. After spending a year in Israel, Omer decided to join the IDF. He was taken hostage on October 7 while serving as a tank commander near Gaza. Edan Alexander was born in Tel Aviv 20 years ago and grew up in Tenafly, New Jersey. As the eldest of three, Edan has always been a role model for his younger sister and brother. After graduating from high school, Edan decided to come to Israel and join the IDF's Golani Brigade. On October 7, he was stationed near Gaza and was taken hostage by Hamas terrorists. Today, 347 days later, Omer and Edan are still being held captive by Hamas in Gaza. Please welcome Omer's parents, Orna and Ronen Neutra, and Edan's parents, Yael and Adi Alexander. First of all, thank you so much for being here with us this evening. It means a lot to me, and I think to each and every person in the audience. I would like to start by asking about your kids, as teenagers. What kind of kids and teenagers were they? And why do you think they chose to join the IDF? Yael, would you like to start?
Good evening. I'm Yael, Edan's mom. We are from Tenafly, New Jersey. Edan grew up in this beautiful community. You're asking me to speak about Edan, and I wish everyone knew him because he was such a beautiful soul. He's amazing. He's like very caring. He's a good friend. He's a good brother. He's an amazing son. We had like the greatest relationship. Going to concert, shopping, restaurant, like our house is totally broken without him. And I just wish for the moment that we will see him again. I just want to hug him and hug him so much.
You deserve to have him home and to hug him. Ronen and Orna?
It's very difficult, as you can see, to summarize your kid in a few sentences. Like many of your children, our children grew up here in the United States. Omer was born in New York City and grew up in the Jewish community in Plainview on Long Island, or Plain Jew. Very warm community. He went to Schechter Day School, very Zionistic, warm community. And as a kid, he's like probably a lot of your children, very much into sports, played on every team in his school. In high school, he was captain of all the sports teams. It was a small school. Fun kid, athletic, very, very social. On the one hand, He's the kid with the messiest room. I can't walk into his room. And on the other hand, he's doing a million things in high school. He's taking all the AP classes, he's the captain of the sports team, and he's a leader in USY, like you mentioned. He's very much a leader, but he's he's like a team leader. He loves his friends, they're always on his team. And I think that's, what's unique about him. And when he graduated high school, he went through the college acceptance process. But as a family, we felt that it would be good for him to spend some time in Israel. Our family is in Israel. And he went on a gap year program, Mechina, and fairly quickly made very strong connections with his Israeli friends. And over the course of that year, started feeling that he couldn't just go back to college, that he wanted to serve. And if you were to ask him, and he actually wrote for the school newspaper, I think he was 6 years into his service, 6 months into his service, he wrote for the school newsletter, and he said, my decision to join the IDF wasn't an easy decision, and it was probably based on many things that I grew up on. And he really loves Israel.
Yeah.
And mostly from that.
And what do you know as their families about what happened on the morning of October 7th?
So on the night of October 6th, we spoke to Omer. It was late night. We were checking our phones like many people on the crowd. And I'm seeing rockets flying. And all of a sudden, I see that there's also a ground invasion. That was special. Immediately, I called Omer. It's 11:30 in New York, early in the morning. But unfortunately, he didn't answer. I got very stressed. We didn't sleep the whole night. We're trying to figure out what happened. And we're seeing that Israel was invaded. We heard the outcry in the kibbutzim. It took a few hours for us to make some phone calls to find out that his tank was found empty. And later on, we learned that a Hamas propaganda video surfaced showing Omer and his team pulled out of a burning tank on the border. And so we learned that Omer, as a commander of a small post that Edan was one of the Golani soldiers, rushed as a first responder to the border to try and stop the invasion, and they were hit by RPGs and explosives, and the tank was put on fire. And from that video on, we don't have any sign of life of Omer, and our life has changed dramatically.
Yael and Adi, you have received a sign of life from Edan. Can you tell us a bit about that?
So that morning, Edan was stationed at the tiny outpost, IDF outpost. When both tanks and all soldiers left this post, he stayed there by himself. The post was attacked by almost 30 terrorists. So Edan tried to conduct a fight against 30. And somehow he managed to surrender, so we kind of consider ourselves lucky because the 80 of Golani soldiers lost their lives this morning. Now, in regards of the signs of life, Edan was seen on October 7 in the tunnels, and he was seen later by the released hostages in those tunnels. And he was okay, in a good spirit, actually. He tried to mediate between Hamas and Thai workers explaining Hamas that these are not Israeli citizens, they should go. And he tried to comfort the elderly and young kids, so kind of trying to help others in those tunnels, which is amazing.
Amazing. I want to ask you about nearly the past year, about being families of Israeli hostages, but being located here in the US. I'm sure it's a very different experience from what the rest of the families of the hostages are going through in Israel. Could you tell us a bit about your efforts here in the US, which are extremely important?
So, like Ronen said, we learned about the attack. It was nighttime in the United States. Of course, we didn't sleep. We were following the news the whole night. And by late Saturday night, we already found out that Omer was taken hostage. And my parents were visiting with us from Israel. They were with us for the holiday, and the phone calls started coming in from Israel. When are you coming back? When are you coming back? And our reaction was, we need to be here. Learning about the chaos in Israel, I think in the first few weeks, until, there was even an understanding of what was going on, what had happened, we immediately said to ourselves, Omer's an American citizen, we have a role here, and we have to do everything that we can to get the government to understand what's going on in Israel and to be engaged. So this is on Sunday that we already wrote a letter to the White House, and it was received. We know that it was received by Secretary Blinken and by the President, informing them that Omer is a U.S. citizen, and this was even before it was confirmed that he was taken hostage. That informally, we know that he was taken hostage, and since that moment, we've been fighting for Omer, both here and in Israel, speaking with government officials, anyone of influence that could help in releasing Omer and the rest of the hostages, both here and in Israel.
Yael?
On October 7, I was in Israel. The morning of October 7 started very scary, like everyone knew that something is wrong. I texted with Edan back and forth, and a few minutes to 7 a.m., he called me. And it was the last call. And afterwards, silence. You cannot reach him, you cannot talk with him, you don't know what's going on. Adi came with the kids to Israel immediately. Like I told him, listen, I don't know what's going on. Edan is 19 years old without his iPhone. So they came to Israel. We got the announcement on Thursday, right before we met with Anthony Blinken. We had a meeting with him. We got the announcement that Edan is kidnapped by Hamas. And then I just came back home with the kids, with Mika and Roy, because I felt that we need to start working here at the US. We are Americans, and every door, everyone is willing to see us, to speak with us, to help us. So this is it. We're like back and forth every 3 weeks. Israel, America.
And I must say that I'm currently living in the US for this year, and we live rather close. I'm in a town not very far from Tenafly, and when I first visited Tenafly, I was astonished and very moved by the signs of Edan all around the town, a weekly rally, and even within the WhatsApp groups of Israeli Americans there, they bring you meals almost on a daily basis. And I want to ask, on behalf of all of the people here, I think that's maybe the most important question. What are your expectations from us? Because a lot has to do with Hamas and the Israeli government and the American government and the army. But there is civil society and there is power within civil society. So what can each and every one of us do in his daily life?
What we found as a silver lining of the whole tragic situation that we found ourselves is really the community. The fact that the Jewish and the Israeli communities around us, on Long Island, back in Israel, in New York City, in Tenafly, everywhere we go, hugs us, supports us, delivers food, comes to rallies, join us every Sunday in Work for Their Lives, whether it's in many locations on Long Island, in the city, in Central Park, around other locations around the States. All of this really shows support and is so important, even sometimes more important when we're not there, because people need to see that the hostages are still not back home. We are right now 7 American families, Israeli American families, out of 101 families that are craving for their children, that are crying out, it's time to bring a deal, and we need you to support us in this struggle to convince the world, Hamas, the pressure on Hamas, and the Israeli government that there's no time, that it's urgent, that their lives is on stake. We just learned 2 weeks ago about the precious 6 young Israeli and the American Israeli, Hirsch, being murdered, slaughtered. This can happen to any of our kids any minute, any day. We don't have time. So we need your support. We have access to the American government. We're doing our share. You need to pressure. You need to call your congressmen. You need to call your representatives and tell them these hostages must come out.
Yael and Adi.
Bring them home. Bring them home. Bring them home. Bring them home. Bring them home.
Yael, would you like to add? Would you like to add about your expectation? I see how complicated it is and challenging, so I want to thank you once again, all of you, for being here with us. And I'm sure that you're sending people home today with a clear message. Toda. Thank you for that.
Thank
Toda
you.
rabba. Thank you.
very much.
And let's bring them home.
Yeah.